Hello everybody, welcome to the first lecture video of Python for Data Science. My name is Dilek Celik, I'm a doctor at the university in London. So let's start to this video. And this is an outline of this video, guys, and today we are going to look at your first program. At the end of this video, you will be able to write your first program, and we are going to looking at variables and assignments and how we can define the variables, so how we can assign the variables some values, and then we will look at the code commands in Python. Then we will learn about indentation, and then we will be looking at some basic data types in Python. Then we will learn about type in ID. And finally, we will learn about type conversation, and which is typecasting. So let's start with your first program. In Python, the print function basically prints the specified message to the screen. So we use the print function to print out some message, some outcome, right? So here, as you can see, we have been provided some examples. In the first one, we print hello world. So this is string value. We will be looking at in the data type section with more detail. And this is a string value, and this is the something that we are going to print here. When you are printing string values, you have to use double quotes or single quotes. In another example here, we are printing an integer value. Basically, guys, when you type print and inside the parentheses, when you insert your values, it will print out, it will show that message, that input, basically. And in the third example here, and we are printing a float number. When you run this piece of code, and you can stop the video here whenever we have some practice, you can stop the video, you can go to your compiler, and then you can just write this piece of code and run it. When you run this piece of code, and those are the results you will get. And let's look at how we can, what is the variables and how we can assign the variables. And basically in Python, a variable is a reserved memory location storing the values. And they are the variable basically holds the data for us that we can use inside the code. And when we assigning the variable, we use the equal sign. So let's look at those examples here. And we have three variables. Let's look at the first one. We have a variable name. So this is the name of the variable. And the name is, this is the value that we have assigned to this variable. And when you assign a string value, again, guys, you have to use these quotes. Single quote or double quote. And the rest of the statement that you are seeing is that those are comments, guys. Basically, those are not executed by the compiler because those are comments. So you can ignore these parts, and you can just look at, you can focus on how we are naming the variable and how we are assigning a value for this variable. And we have another variable here, age, and the value of it is 30. We have another variable name, height, and we have the value of 1.73. And this is how we can print this variable. We write the print statement, and then inside the parentheses, we insert the name of the variables, right, one by one. And when you run this piece of code, and this is the result you will get. Basically, guys, when you print those variable names, and they will print the value, they will print the data they hold, right? So let's look at how we can make some chained assignment. In Python, it is possible to assign the same value to several variables at the same time. So let's look at this example. We have different variable names here, and one of them is A, other one is B, and the other one is C. And we would like to assign the same variable to all of them. And this is how we can do this, right? You can, in just one single line, and you can put all your variable names with a equal sign between them, and you at the end you enter the value that you wanna assign to these variables. And when we print all of these variables here, and when you run this piece of code, and this is the result you will get, because we assign a 10 to all of them, and those are the results of this print statement. And in Python, it's also possible to assign multiple values to multiple variables in one line. So as you can see here, we have 3 different variables again, and we have assigned different values for each of them. So it is in the assigning the variables should be in the same order that you have put the variable name. So for example, A will be 10 in this case, and B will be -20, and C will be a string value. And when you print each of these variable names, and those are the results you will get, basically they will turn back the values they are holding, right? So the 10 for A, -20 for B, and blue for C. And there are some rules with naming the variables. And the variable name, let's start from the first one. Variable names can be any length, but in practice, the length should be reasonable. So one letter, one word, a concatenation of words. So you should make the variable names in a reasonable long. Otherwise, it will be difficult when you are reusing your variables. And a variable name can only contain alphanumeric characters and underscore. So for example, guys, those are the some characters you can use when you are defining your variable name. And variable names are case sensitive. So when you type age with a different use of the uppercase and lowercase letters, basically guys, in this example, those are 3 different variables. It is because the Python is case sensitive. And the variable names must begin with a letter or underscore. So let's look at this example here. When you start your variable with a number, it's not gonna be a valid variable name. You can't start your variable name with a number. A variable name cannot contain a space. Let's look at this example here. When you type this as a variable name, the system will complain about it because it's not a valid variable name. And a variable name may contain some Unicode characters as well. So for example, those are some Unicode characters. And from Python 3, and since Python 3, it's possible to use Unicode characters inside the variable names. Another thing with the variable names is that there are some Python reserved words, and we can't use these reserved words as a variable name. We will be looking at in the next slide. And to learn about Python reserved words, and this is something that you can do. You can import the keyword, and you can print keyword KW list. And when you run this piece of code, and this is the result you will get. Basically, it tells you all the reserved words of Python. I think, for example, there is else or false, true. Those are the words that you can't use as a variable name. Alternatively, this is also another way of accessing all these variable names. If you just type help, and if you just type keywords inside the quotes, and this will give you these results. And basically, those are the same results that we have here. Again, those are all the Python reserved words that you can't use as a variable name. Let's look at some variable names examples here. And we have a name let's look at the first example here, guys. First piece of code here, and we have different name and we have different variable name, and they have assigned it with different values here. So we have name with a string value, the age 21 with an integer, another age 21. However, this is uppercase letters, so those are different variables, right? And this is integer, and we have another variable name, and underscore is used in this variable name, and it is assigned, the UK is assigned to this variable. And when we print them all in one line of code, and this is the result you will get. So because you put them all in one print statement with a comma, and it will print it in one line, as you can see here. And you can try this on your compiler, compiler as well. And we have another variable here, guys. As you can see, it is name is 5a. You have to remember something here. You can't start with a number to your variable name. Therefore, this is not gonna work. The system will complain about it. This is something you can't do. We have another example, else equals hello. This will not work because else is a Python reserved word, and this can't be used as a variable name. And we have another value here, alpha equals 5. When we print the alpha, this will work fine, guys, and it will print 5 for us. We have, in another example, we have p equals this value, and when we print this, this will work fine as well. In another example, there is a use of some Unicode characters, as you can see here, and it equals to Nivea, and when you print this, this will work fine. In the final example, we assign a symbol to a string value, and basically this will not work because we can't use the symbols as a variable name when you run this, and this is the result you will get. And there are some other rules. For example, there are some names that you need to avoid. So basically those rules will not affect the working of your code, but it will make it less readable or less maintainable. So for example, guys, let's look at here. Never use the characters letter L, right? Lowercase letter L, or uppercase letter O, or uppercase letter I as a single character variable names, because in some fonts, these characters are indistinguishable from the numerals 1 and 0. And when tempted to use L, use uppercase L instead. And for more information on this kind of topics, you can look at this website here. In Python, it is possible to redeclare the same variables even after you have declared one in the same code. So for example, we have defined a variable name, variable A, and it equals to 100, and we printed it out here. And after some piece of lines of code here, and we would like to re-declare the same variable name, and we assign Python as a value to this variable name, and we print it out here. What will happen is that, guys, the value of the A will change here because we redeclare it here. So when you run this, and this is the result you will get. So it will print 100 for the first one. It will print Python for the second one, because it is because we redeclared a new value for the A. And Python is dynamically typed, and it is not required to declare the type of variable while assigning a value to a variable in Python, because it binds it to its corresponding type during execution. It means that, guys, so for example, we have A here and we have 100. We never say that the A is integer, but the system automatically detects it. So the type of A is integer, right? And in another example here, B is assigned to float number, and the type of B is float. And the type of C here is the string. And we never tell Python the type of these variables, it automatically detects it. So in some other in some other programming languages, you have to define, you have to specify the type of variables. So, and they are called statistically typed. So in those programming languages, basically guys, when you would like to, when you wanna create an integer A, what you need to do is that you, at the beginning, you should say that integer A, and it equals to 100, right? So, however, in Python, we don't need to do this one. The system gets it automatically. And Python is strongly typed, and so variables cannot be implicitly concatenated to unrelated types. And we have two different variables here. One of them is an integer. This is the type of this integer, right? This is 50. And we have a B here, and it equals to 100 inside the quotes. It is because it's inside the quotes, it means that even though this is a number, however, guys, it will treat it as a string value because it becomes string when you use the, when you put the numbers inside the quotes, right? It can be double quote or it can be single quote. Any number you will enter here and it will be read as a string value. And when you want to print them all like this, so guys, it will not work. It is because of the type, right? When you want to make an addition of these numbers, addition of these values, 50 plus string, so basically it's not gonna work. It's because of the type of these variables. So, and another topic is the comments in Python code. And we can use some comments in Python. A code comment is basically a human readable explanation of the code. And these comments are ignored by the interpreters or compilers. So they don't affect your piece of code. And the codes are, these comments, the code comments are useful. The code comments are useful to prevent the parts of the code from being, and the comments are interpreted, executed without the need to delete them because the system will ignore them, right? And we use the code sometimes just to inform us or sometimes just to inform other developers. Basically, we use it to increase the readable explanation of the code. And there are three kinds of comments. One of them is a single line, other one is inline, the third one is block comment. And let's start with those single line and inline comments. In Python, the comments starts with a hash character, and when you wanna make some comment, you have to start it with a hash character. And the comments, if the comment appear at top of a line of code, following white space or code, but not within a string literal. So this is a string single line comments basically. So let's look at the example here, guys. We inserted the comment, the code comment at the top of the code, and we use a hash character here, right? So this is called a single line comments. This is something that you can do. And when you run this piece of code, it will work fine. So because this starts with a hash character and then we have some text value here, so the system will ignore this part. This section is just an information for us or for other developers who are using this piece of code. And another type of comment is inline comments, where you can insert the comments after the piece of code. So for example, guys, we have a print statement here, and right after that, we put some information, and it must start with a hash character. So it explains it just explains what this piece of code does, right? So this is an information for us, maybe. And so in another example here, we have another hash character. However, guys, this is inside the double quotes, as you can see. Anything inside this double quotes, basically it is part of this text value here. So it is a value for the B here. This is not a beginning of the comment. However, this is just a character for the B. And when we run this piece of code, and this is the result we will get. It will print 50, and it will print 50 for the print A, and it will print hello hash for the value of variable B here. Another type of comments is the block comments. In Python, there is no mechanism to comment out the blocks of code. Basically, the block of code is the several lines of code. And when you are writing the when you want to make a block comments of code, each line of code should be prepended with a hash character. But there is a round by using the triple quotes of doctrines. And there is some specific information here for especially the user of the PyCharm. And there is some shortcut of commenting and uncommenting the block of code. And you can follow the steps just to learn about the shortcut of doing this in PyCharm. Indentation. Indentation refers to the spaces at the beginning of a code line. So basically, those are the spaces at the beginning of the code line. And in Python, you have to use indentation, especially when you are writing if-else statement or loop, because the code block is used to delimit the body of if and else statement, and we use the indentation right after that or before that, right? And it starts with indentation and ends with the first unindented line. And to create an indentation, we can use 4 white spaces or tab. As you can see, guys, let's say that this is our first code block, and we have another code block here. And let's say that we have another code block here, and we have to make some indentation here, and this equals to 4 times white space, or this equals to top. And you can, by clicking on the top button on your keyboard, and you can make this indentation, right? And the indentation must be consistent throughout the same block. Otherwise, the system will complain about it. So indentation, very important in Python. You have to be careful with that. And when there is some, not inconsistency with indentation, the system will complain about it, or the system will, your code will create a, wrong results. Let's look at basic data types in Python. And Python supports several built-in basic data types. And in this video, we will be looking at the integers, floating point numbers, complex numbers, Booleans, and strings. Let's start with integers. And we call the integers as integers or ints. And basically, they are the whole number with no decimal point. And integers are signed integers. It means that they can be positive, as you can see, and they can be negative. In this example, we have 2 variables, A and B, and we assign the 50 to A, and we assign it -10 to B. And in Python 3 and beyond, integers are theoretically unlimited in size. However, the maximum size of the integer depends only on the limit of available hardware memory or the compiler that you are using. And floating point numbers are another data types in Python. And the floats represent the real numbers and they contain a decimal point. So we have some examples here, 20.0, we have 14.530. Those are just examples to float numbers. A floating point number is accurate up to 15 decimal places. And another thing that we can know about the floating numbers is that a float can use scientific notation. So for example, we have a number here, integer number, and this is equivalent to this one, and therefore we can write it in a scientific notation, and this is scientific notation of this number that we have. And the floating point real numbers can't be represented with exact precision due to hardware limitations. So for example, we have two variables here, A and B. A equals 1.2, B equals 1.0. And when we make subtraction of these numbers, and this is the result, so this will produce us this result. So when we run this is the result we will get. So basically it doesn't tell us 0.2. So this is one of the limitations of the floating point numbers. So as a consequence, it is dangerous to compare the result of some computation to a float with the equivalence sign in the Python, right? And some small inaccuracies may mean that this will fail. So let's look at some examples. One example here, we have A value, we have B value 1.2, B equals 1.0. When we check this one here, guys, if A minus B equals to 0.2, it will print do something. Otherwise, it will print done. In this case, because it will not be equal because of the value that I have shown to you here, this is the value it will produce for us. So therefore, it is not equals to, it doesn't equal to 0.2. Therefore, this will print us done. And there is one possible solution to fix this issue with Python. And here, let's look at here, guys, and we use epsilon to fix this issue. In this case, when we make this modification, we use the epsilon value here, and therefore, in this case, it will work fine. It will be able to check it and it will produce us the correct results. And this is the result you will get when you execute this piece of code here. Another data type in Python is complex numbers. And a complex number is any number that can be written as a plus bi, where is the I is the imaginary unit and a and b are real numbers. So when we look at here, and a and b are real numbers, and this part of this expression is real part, and this part of this expression is imaginary part. Let's look at those examples here. We have 7i minus 2. The real part is minus 2, and imaginary part is 7. And we have 4 minus 3i. The real part is 4, and the imaginary part is negative 3. Another data type is the Booleans, and the Booleans are the constants true or false. And they are generally used to test whether a condition true or false. And they are used in loops and decision making. So for example, let's look at those examples here, guys. We can assign the Boolean value as a value to variable. As you can see, we can assign it to any variable. And in this case, it will print out false for us. And we have another example here, b equals 10. And we have some checkings here. So when we say like that, it means that 10 greater than 9. Is that true? Yes, this is true. Then it will print us true. And we have another example here. When we replace the b with 10, 10 smaller than 4, is that true? No, in this case, it will print us false. When we run this piece of code, and these are the results you will get. And this is for the A, this is for the B, and this is for the B, and this is for another B. Okay. For another checking here. Let's look at strings, and there are several things we will be looking at with strings. And strings are the sequence of one or more characters that may consist of letters, numbers, or symbols. And the strings are delimited either using the single quote. We can either use a single quote, or we can use double quote, as you can see here. We can print the strings in this way. We can use a print, and then inside the parentheses, we can use either single quotes or double quotes, and it will work in the same way. When you run this piece of code, and this is the result you will get. And the single quote and double quote can be part of the string itself. For example, we can use the double quotes inside the single quotes, or we can use the single quotes inside the double quotes here. And when we run this piece of code, and this is the result we will get, this will be working fine here. And Python has no special type for a single character. It is just a string of length 1. So let's look at this example here. When you have just a single character as a string, it means that we don't have a special type for this in Python. It is just a string of length 1. And when you print it, it will just print the letter, the character. Another thing with Python is that when you type empty, the double quote or single quote with empty point here, and basically it means that this is an empty string. It is still a string, however, it is an empty string, and this is how you can print an empty string. With the strings, we can use some escape sequences, and escape sequences basically are a set of special characters used to print characters which can't be typed directly using the keyword. And each escape sequence starts with a backslash character. So for example, guys, inside, let's say that you have a string, we have a string value here. And you can't use just single quote inside this string value. So this will, the program will complain about it. You can't use this like that. And if you want to use just one single character, just one single quote inside your text, and you have to use some escape sequence, which is the backslash character. You have to use this one so that it can print this as single quote. And we have different escape sequence. We have backslash n, backslash t, double backslash, backslash single quote, backslash double quote. So when you do this one, and it will print a new line character, and when you do this one with a T, it will print a top character. Double backslash prints the backslash character. So if you wanna print out a backslash character inside your code as a string value, you have to use a backslash character in front of it. So there are some characters you can't use directly inside your text. In these cases, guys, you have to use backslash characters so that you can insert it in your text. So let's look at here, guys, and basically N help us to go to the next line. However, we can't use this directly here, and therefore we have to use backslash character. When we run this one, and this is what it will do for us. Again, there are some characters we can't use directly inside the text. In those cases, we have to use the backslash character. Disabling special character meaning is that, so sometimes, guys, you just want to disable this special character, right? In order to prevent Python from translating them to use the escape character, backslash character, basically. So for example, let's look at this example here. And we have escaping the backslash single character. So this will work fine. It will print this one, this single quote inside the text. This one will print double quote inside the text. However, when you insert one more backslash character, basically it means that you disable the special character. So when we run this piece of code, instead of making another line here, normally this should print the character in another line. However, as we use it another backslash character here, we disable it to escaping character. So therefore, it only prints this as a text for us, as a string value. So this is the meaning of disabling special character. And there are triple quoted strings, and they are used to create multi-line strings in Python. And they are delimited by matching groups of 3 single quotes, as you can see here, or 3 double quotes. In triple quoted strings, there is no need to escape single quote, double quote, or new line. So for example, here, guys, we have a text value we have a string value with triple quotes, with the triple quotes. And we can use string quotes or double quote, single quote or double quote inside this text without use of escape character. And again, these are used to create a multi-line strings. And if you wanna create a multi-line strings, and this is something that you can use, as you can see here. And when we run this piece of codes here, and in the first one, it will print the single and double quotes. It will not give any problem. And when we run the second piece of code here, and this is the result that we will get. And there are some string operators that can be used with the string values. So to explain these string operators, I'm going to use the following variable as an example, guys. So I assume that I have 2 variables, A and B. A equals hello, B equals Python. Let's start with the plus string operator. Basically, this adds values on either side of the operator. And when we say A plus B, and when we consider this example that I have provided here, this will basically tell us, this will basically create hello Python with no space. This is what it does. When you say A plus B, it binds them together with no space. We have multiplication. This helps it helps with concatenating multiple copies of the string. So for example, guys, when we say A multiplied by 2, it will print us 2 times hello. And we have a slice, and the slice gives the character from the given index. Actually, there is an index value of each character in a string. So for example, we have hello, right? And we have some index number of each this character. And we, to be able to access to each character, we should know the index of each, index number of each character. And the indexing starts from the 0 and it continues like that, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we use the slice character to access each of these character, right? So for example, when we say A, because A equals hello, and when using this slice character, and when we say A slice, let's say 1, so this means that this will return us, when we print this will return us E, because the value with the index number 1 is E here, as you can see. And this is what slice is about, and this is what index is about. Index is something that you must know. And there is a range slice, and the range slice gives the characters from the given range. So let me illustrate this for you here, guys. When we have A with the range of 1 to 4, let's say that this is the range, this is the 4, and basically this will return us from 1 to 3. It's not gonna get the last one. Therefore, this will return us ELL. This is how you can access to the specific characters inside the whole string values. And then we have another string operator in, and this returns true if a character exists in a given string. So for example, we can say that H in A, it means that is there H letter inside the A? So if yes, it will return true for us. And we have not in string operator. This does the opposite one. So we can check it in the same way. So for example, here, M not in A. If it is not inside the A, this will return true again. That's true, right? And we have R, lowercase letter or the uppercase letter R, and this prevents an escape character from being rendered. So basically, as you can see here, this will print this one. I think this does the same stuff that we have learned in the previous section here. This is the same way of disabling this special character. And finally, we have format, and format performs string formatting. We will learn more about the format operator later on. And in this slide, we have been provided several examples of the string operators. We have two variables, string A and STRA, STRB, and the STRA equals hello, STRB equals word. And when we want to print them together, this is something we do. We use the plus sign. In this example, the string A is multiplied by 4. Actually, when you run this piece of code, those are the results you will get. So basically, the first one will tell us hello world together. The second one will produce hello for 4 times because we multiplied it for 4 times. And string a slash 2, again, this will get the value with the index number 2, and so it equals to L, right? It's just remember the indexing of the hello. It starts from 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So as it is 2, this will return us L. We have a range slice here. 1 to 3, it will get 1 to, because it is 1 to 3, it will get only E and L here. So as you can see, this is the result you will get. And another, we have a in operator L in STRA. Do we have L inside the hello? Yes, that's true. Hola, not in STRA. Yes, that's true. And finally, we have disabling character, which is R, and therefore this will print this outcome for us. Another important operator with string is the format operator. And basically, it's a placeholder that allows to replace parts of a string with data stored in variables. And the format operator is used along with a flag. So for example, guys, we have a variable here, days, that equals to 7. And we have a text here, and there is some section that we would like to replace with those data that we have. And this is where we use the format operator. Basically, it allows replace part of a string with the data stored in variables. And this is how we use it. Right? When you put this inside your text, and at the end of this string value, you have to say format and the name of your variable. And when you run this piece of code, it will return this one. A week has 7 days. And also we can format several variables. So look at this example here. We have several variables, name, age, height. And as you can see, guys, their types are different. The name is string, age is integer, and height is float number. And when we want to insert them inside this text, so S for the string, format S, format D, D is for integers, and F is for float numbers. And at the end of this string, again, we have to enter all the variable names inside the parentheses, as you can see here. And when we run this piece of code, basically, guys, it will replace this section with the variable data. So name will goes to here, the age goes to here, and height goes to here. And this is the final outcome it's produced for us. So, and as you realize, we had used different letters with the format operator. So format S, this is used for string, to replacing the string data. Format D is for integers. Format F for floating numbers. And it is possible to specify or the decimal points in the floating point numbers. So you can have fixed amount of digits to the right of the dot. So for example, guys, when you do this, when you use the F in this way, in this case, it will only show the 4 decimal point of your floating number. And in another point here, guys, the integers in hex representation, if you wanna show your integers in hex representation, this is something that you need to do, the format X. And we have some example of this one here. So we have integer value here, and we would like to insert the integer here, and we want to insert the hex value of this integer, so we use the format X. And when we run this piece of code, and this is the result we will get. It replaces this area with this number. However, in here it tells us the hex representation of this integer. So let's look at type and ID. In Python, it is possible to get the type of a Python object by calling the type function on that object. So we will be looking at, on this example, we have several variables defined with different types of data, different types of values. And when we want to learn the type of each this variable, this is something we can do. So when you type type and then quotes parentheses, and then you have to enter the name of the object that you want to get the type of it. And when you run this piece of code, and this is the result you will get. Basically, it tells you the type of each object here. The A is a string, B is a float number, C is a Boolean, and D is a complex number, as you can, as we can see here. And we can apply the type to expressions as well. Just look at this example here. Look at this example here. We have the type and we have an expression here, and we can get the type of this expression when we run this code, and this will produce us float. And we use the type mostly for debugging. Another function is ID, and ID basically returns an integer which is unique identifier of an object. In Python, every object has unique identifier, and to learn about an identifier of an object, we use the ID function. And ID is guaranteed to be unique and constant for this object during its lifetime. And two objects with non-overlapping lifetimes may have the same ID value. We have three different variables here, the x, y, z. X equals 123, y equals hello, and z equals 123. And when we run the ID of it, this is how we can use it. So you have to write ID, and then parentheses, you have to insert the name of your object, and then you have to close the parentheses. And of course, you have to print this so that we can see the results. And when we run this piece of code here, and those are the results we will get, as you can see, the ID of X and Z is same, as they have the same values here. Another important thing with Python is the type conversation or casting. And typecasting or type conversation is very important in Python. And Python allows the converting value of data type, and it can be integer, float, or string to another data type. And there are two kinds of type conversation, and one of them is implicit type conversation. The other one is explicit type conversation. Let's start with implicit type conversation. And Python automatically does implicit type conversation with no user involvement. So let's look at this example here. We have three variables, a equals 7, b equals 3, and c equals a divided by b. And when we print the b, so this is an integer, however, c will be float, right? And we don't do anything explicitly regarding the type of the c. The Python does this implicitly. When we run this piece of code, and this is the result we will get. So even though the A is 7, B is 3, the C becomes a float number. And so there are some points that the implicit conversation doesn't work. So we have, let's look at this example here. We have A equals 5. We have another variable B equals 35. However, guys, again, this is inside the double quotes. Therefore, this is a string. This is integer. This is string, right? The type of B is string. And when we want to make an addition of those numbers, so the system will complain about it. It won't be able to convert this, right? Convert the 35 as an integer. So as you can see here, this will complain about it. So in this kind of conditions, guys, the developer has to do the conversation explicitly. We have to explicitly convert this string to integer. So how can we do that? Let's look at how we can do that. And this is called as typecasting or explicit type conversation. An explicit conversation is done using the predefined functions such as the integer, float, or string. And you have to write the new required data type. So if it's an int, if you want to turn it to integer, you have to type the required data type, and then you have to insert the expression inside this. Let's look at an example here. We have A equals 5, we have B that equals 35. However, as you remember, this is a string and A is integer. And when we want to make an addition of those values, we have to use casting. We have to cast B to integer value, as you can see here, so that this operation, this calculation can be made. When we run this piece of code, it will be working fine now. It is because of this casting, because we turn this string value to integer. So this is what casting is about. And there are some cons of explicit type conversation. And explicit conversation may cause loss of data. So for example, let's look at this example, how it causes loss of data. We have a value which is a float number. And when we cast this to integer, b equals integer a, basically it will not get the decimal part of this number, right? When we run this piece of code, it will print us 43. Therefore, we lost this part of this decimal points in this value. So explicit conversation might cause loss of data. And let's look at different use of typecasting. And in this example, as you can see, we have converted integers to float. We have an integer, and if you want to turn this to float number, and this is what you need to do. And when we run this piece of code, guys, and those are the results we will get. So in this case, as you can see, the integers is returned to float number. And we have another converting, we have the floats, and we want to turn this to integer. And this is what we need to do here. And this will be the result of this. As you can see, we have a loss of data here. It doesn't get the decimal points. We can turn the numbers to string, and this is something that we need to do. This is the number we have when we want to turn this to string, so that we can use this operator here, and we have to make it string, and this is the result we will get. If you don't this casting here, guys, you won't be able to put them together. Another casting given as an example here is from string to numbers. We have a string value, and how we understand it's a string is that it is used with the quotes. So Therefore, this number is a string. And we have to turn, if you want to turn it to number, you can either use float. In here, we use a float, right? And this is the result you will get. So this is the end of this lecture. Thanks for watching my video, guys. If you like my videos, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel and do share my videos with your friends and like my videos. Thanks for watching. See you in the lecture 2 video. Bye-bye.